Hello, I am Naomi Hall, and I am the owner of The Recovering Educator. And this workshop is called Helping Staff Help Students Addressing Educator Burnout. So this workshop was originally presented to the New Hampshire School Administrators Association at their Best Practices Conference on Social and Emotional Learning. So we know that in order for students to achieve and to do their best, we need to take care of our staff. And so that's what we look at in this workshop. Let me introduce myself a little bit. As I said, I'm the owner of The Recovering Educator, and I work to, as my tagline says, help educators thrive. I want to see educators thrive. And I know that through the past few years, burnout has become a big issue. It's not new, but it's just been made worse and more prevalent. And what I do is I help educators with stress and burnout to reduce those and to heal from them and to find life balance again. So Friedrich Flasch said, there is perhaps no more effective way to relieve psychic pain than to be in contact with another human being who understands what you are going through and can communicate such understanding to you. So I come at this from a place of understanding. I have been burnt out. I have been in education for almost 20 years. Both public and private. I have worked as a teacher and as an administrator, and I have experienced the burnout a couple of times, and I've had to come back and I've had to do a lot of work. And so I come alongside educators and we look at what your main pain points are, and we start to work through those and help you find balance again so that you can love your job again. It's a hard job. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot out of you, but your job isn't the only thing that causes you stress. So we're going to look at some of the causes of burnout and overload and a few practical things that you can do and that you can take to your staff. So for students to perform their best, which we know you are all held accountable for your students and how they perform, in order for them to perform their best, your teachers need to be at their best. And they can't be at their best when they are overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, burnt out, dealing with family issues, all of those things that go on at work and at home. And so I try to help teachers be at their best. So here are some of the signs of overload and burnout. There are more, but these are just kind of some umbrella categories: anxiety, depression, hostility, resentment. Do you recognize any of those in your staff? Do you recognize them in yourself? You may have noticed that some of your most competent, capable rock star teachers are now very anxious. You may have noticed that some of your very outgoing teachers have withdrawn within the four walls of their classroom. You probably have noticed some hostility from your staff. You ask a small ask and you get pushback and resentment and hostility. You may even feel it in yourself where you're like, oh my goodness, like I am not an angry person, but that really set me off. These are some of the signs that you or your staff are overloaded or burnt out. And we see this quite a bit. But it's not just our jobs that are burning us out. Yes, education is demanding. Yes, there are new requirements and demands put on educators all the time. But that's not the only place we're getting burnt out. That's not the only place we're experiencing stress. There are 17 areas of overload listed here. Activity. What does your calendar look like? Not just your work calendar, your entire calendar. You probably have activities all over the place. Your calendar is probably booked out months. Your weekends are probably full. Change overload. We have constant change in education, constant change in our lives. The number of choices that we have. You just go to the grocery store, there's an entire aisle of cereals. There's an entire aisle at Walmart of toothpastes. So many choices. Commitment overloaded. How many committees are you on? Debt overload. Think of how many of your veteran teachers still have student loans that they're working to pay off. When we are in debt, that just escalates our stress. Decision overload. We have so many decisions, and we know as educators, the number of decisions we make in a day is astronomical. It's no wonder we go home exhausted. This is part of why people like Steve Jobs, President Barack Obama had basically a daily uniform that they wore. If you think of Steve Jobs and you picture him in your head, you probably see him in his black turtleneck jeans and sneakers. That's basically what he wore every day because it removed a decision from his day. And he no longer had to make a decision about what he wore, and he could use that energy on other decisions. Possession overload. We have storage facility for our possessions. Technology overload is constantly changing. Expectation overload. We have this expectation in our culture that we can do everything, be everything, and accomplish everything. And we can't. Fatigue. We're tired. Hurry. We're going from place to event to meeting, constantly hurrying. Information overload. The amount of information we have at our fingertips is humongous. And it just keeps growing. Media overload. Media is everywhere, coming at us constantly. Noise overload. I think of our kids who walk our hallways with earbuds in all the time. They constantly have input of noise. We constantly have input of noise. Everywhere you go, there's music playing, and our mind needs that break of some silence. We have people overload. I can tell you at the end of, it was the 2021 school year, I was done with people. I was like, I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be around anyone. And I went on vacation to a resort by myself. I came back much happier, but I was done with people. Traffic overload. Our roadways are clogged. Work overload. This one we relate to very easily in education. There are some causes of burnout. There are 5 here. I've lost my passion for the work. My workplace is toxic. I feel underappreciated. I'm bored to death. I feel completely overwhelmed. I would say probably the bottom one there, I feel completely overwhelmed, is the number one cause that we see in education is our teachers, our staff, our administrators are just overwhelmed by all that they have to do. Another one that we see is feeling underappreciated. Our staff feels this on all sides. They're being attacked by on all sides, whether it's coming from the school board, administration, parents of their students, the community. They're really feeling underappreciated right now. And I know that as administrators, you're trying to find ways to show that you appreciate your staff, but there's only so much that you can do. And in a lot of schools, our teachers are working, our staff is working in toxic situations. Hopefully that's not the case in your school and district, but it might be. And I've worked in that situation, and that is so hard when you're in a toxic environment. I have cried my way to work, and I have cried my way home from certain jobs because it was so toxic. And we do see some educators, they've just been in it too long and they've lost the passion for their work. And they really need to change things up. There are some teachers that can teach the same grade for 20, 30, 40 years, and they never lose their passion. They're fantastic. There are others that they need some change. They can teach the same grade for a few years or the same subject for a few years, but then they need a little bit of change. I'm one of those people that I could not teach the same thing over and over again for 20, 30, 40 years. Although I have to say, I taught physical science for most of the time that I've been teaching since I started. But my other courses changed up quite a bit. And I'm bored to death. That kind of goes with I've lost the passion for the work. There's no longer interest and energy left. They're bored by their job. So how do we change this? What do we do? How do we help ourselves, and how do we help our staff? Well, first off, as an administrator, you need to set the example. You have got to take care of yourself first. You cannot help your staff if you don't help yourself. It's like that principle in the airplane. You need to put your oxygen mask on first, and then look at what you can do for your staff. Then Look at what you can do to reduce overload for your staff. Now, there's certain areas of their lives that you can't reduce the overload, but let's take a look. We're going to go back and take a look at what you can do to help reduce overload for your staff. And then take some steps to provide some practical support. So let's go back a couple slides. Okay, so let's look at this in terms of yourself. What areas of overload do you need to work on reducing for yourself? How about activities? Do you need to start saying no? I know as educators, I feel like we always have to say yes. We always have to do more. But what if you started flexing your no? No, I can't do that. No, I cannot add that to my schedule. I am fully committed right now. That's a term that I learned in a book I was reading last night, is rather than saying I can't right now, is to say, no, I'm sorry, my schedule is fully committed right now. That you are fully committed to the things that are on your schedule, giving your full attention. You can't add any more. Change. Can you reduce the amount of change? Choice. Choice and decision overload kind of go together. Can you reduce the number of choices and decisions you have to make in a day? Routines help remove the decision from the situation. So a bedtime routine, you know exactly what's going to happen. You don't have to make any decisions about it. We don't have to decide whether or not we're going to brush our teeth. We just do it. It's routine. What you're going to wear. Can you reduce the number of choices in what you're going to wear each day? A capsule wardrobe is a nice way to do that. It simplifies it. What other choices can you remove? Part of the way I do this for myself is meal planning and prep. I know exactly what I'm going to eat all week. So once I've taken care of it on the weekend, I don't have to think about it during the week. That removes a choice or a decision for me. What about possessions? I am on a mission right now to kind of keep reducing and getting rid of things, donating them, whatever it is, to reduce that possession overload. Think about when you walk into a room that's cluttered and full of things, think of how you feel. And then think of how you feel when you walk into a room that is a little bit more minimalistic, and how you feel then. There's a difference. Technology, expectations, hurry. Can you just take 5 minutes between meetings to just slow down and breathe rather than hurry from meeting to meeting? Where can you reduce the information that you're taking in the media? One of the things I have done is I have some podcasts that I listen to regularly. I've removed the news ones. I don't listen to them. And you know what? When you remove news from your information and media, you find you don't miss it. You still know what's going on. Anything important that happens, people will tell you and you can look it up. Noise. Can you give yourself some peaceful time? Maybe it's on your drive home from work. Turn off the radio, turn off the podcast, and just drive in quiet, in silence. Maybe it's going out to take a brief walk outside at lunchtime. No podcast, no earbuds, just walking. Just hearing what is going on outside, hearing the children playing, maybe if you're at work. People overload. When you're at work, I'm not sure. Sometimes there's not a way to reduce that, but thinking about that, traffic, maybe you start carpooling and work. Now, let's think about what you can reduce for your staff. Let's look at a few. Change. Could you put a hiatus on change and new initiatives for a year? I know this is hard, but can you give your staff a break from change? How can you give them a break from change? Can you reduce some of the choice and decision overload for your staff? How about information overload? How often are you communicating with your staff? Is there a way to kind of streamline that? How about expectations? Especially when it comes to like emails and messages and things like that. Oftentimes we feel like when we get a message, we have to respond immediately. Well, actually you don't. And what if you communicated that to your staff? That you set a 24-hour rule for yourself and for your staff, and you clearly communicated that. And you said to your staff, I do not expect you to respond to me immediately when I contact you. I do expect you to respond within 24 hours. And I will follow the same rule. I will respond within 24 hours. That takes some pressure off. Once they know that that's your expectation, that they can sit on the message, they can have time to think and process before they respond. And that you expect the same thing when it comes to messages from parents. I expect you to respond within 24 hours. You do not have to respond immediately. That takes some stress off. What about noise overload? Is there a way that you can reduce noise or create some times of silence and peace for your staff? And what can you do for the work overload? I know there are so many things that we cannot reduce, so many things that are mandated that we have to do, but what could you reduce? Okay, so take care of yourself. That's your first step. What areas of stress, overload, burnout can you reduce for yourself? Set an example for your staff. How about leaving on Friday afternoon? I used to have a boss that would walk around on Friday afternoon and be like, see you later, you need to go home. I used to do that for my staff. On Friday afternoons, I would walk around, and anyone that was still there, I'd say, hey, hope you're going home soon. See you later. Have a great weekend. Give them permission to go home, to leave. So they don't need to stay late. 1 day a week. Leave as early as you can. Okay, set the example. Help your staff reduce overload, and then provide some practical support. So I'm going to give you a few different things that you can do for yourself that you also can share with your staff, and then what I provide as practical support. So first off, we need to start creating some margin. When we look at a piece of paper that has writing on it, or we look at a book, it has margins. And when a book has margin, we can put little notes in there. We can add, we can jot things down in it. Our lives need that same space. We need some margin to be able to deal with the unexpected. And right now, most of us live with no margin. And so when something goes wrong, we kind of fall apart, our lives fall apart. I have to say, things went a little sideways for me Sunday. I got a flat tire on my way to church. You know what? It could have totally thrown me for a loop. It wasn't a fantastic event, but because I have some margin in my life and I have the room to think through in kind of these 4 areas, I was able to deal with it. I contacted who I needed to contact. I did have to change it myself, but it was done. It was taken care of, and it wasn't a catastrophe that it could have been. So we need to start creating some emotional, physical, time, and financial margin in our lives. So I just want you to look through these, think, all right, social supports. Who do you have as a mentor? We usually focus on mentors for our new teachers, but what about for our administrators? Our districts don't usually provide mentors at that level. So who are you seeking out as your mentor? Pets. As I talk to you right now, my dog is laying on the floor right next to me. She's an amazing emotional support. Pets, when you pet them, it does amazing things for you. It helps reduce your heart rate. It actually helps with your cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone. So pets are amazing. Getting rest, laughing and crying are great stress relievers, and setting boundaries. Boundaries, sometimes we can look at boundaries as mean, as unkind, but boundaries are one of the kindest things that we can do, especially when we communicate them to other people to say, this is my boundary. When we have a boundary and we don't communicate it, people cross it and we get upset. How fair is that to them when we haven't communicated where the boundary is? And some of us don't have boundaries, and that's part of our problem. With your time, learn to say no. And evaluate, is this something I need to do? Am I the best person to do this? Do I have the time to do this? Or is there someone else that can do it? Okay. And one of the ways to say no is to encourage, decline, and help. So you give them some encouragement, you decline the request, and then you offer what help you can give. What about television, social media, and YouTube? Cutting back on those. Have you ever thought about using the parental controls on your phone for yourself? The only problem with that is you need to make sure that you abide by and don't override, that's what I want, override the message when it says you've used up your time. What about setting some time limits there for yourself? Creating some buffer zones so that you're not back to back to back to back. Okay, give yourself a little room between meetings. Plan some free time, schedule in free time for yourself, but also schedule some time to be available. And then physical, number one, you have got to get sleep. You need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And studies have shown that the most successful people get 8 hours of sleep a night. You are going to be more effective at your job if you are getting adequate sleep. Exercise. Start small if you're not exercising. Start by just moving your body. Have a dance party. Turn up your favorite song and dance for a few minutes. That will boost your mood like you wouldn't believe. Take a short walk at lunch. Eat your lunch while you walk. Okay. Get some movement in. Walk between buildings. Walk around the building to check in on people and say hi. Also prioritize protein, fruits, and vegetables. Protein is going to keep you full longer. And the fruits and vegetables are high fiber, so they're going to also help keep you full. So I know it's hard, but there are easy ways to make protein, fruits, and veggies portable, quick and easy. Also batch cooking helps with this, and meal planning and prepping. And also drink your water. You need to be drinking half your body weight in water, half your body weight in ounces of water a day, which for some of you, is a big, big step. Do it gradually. Start adding an extra cup of water here and there. Find a water bottle that you love and take it with you everywhere you go. Coffee does not count as water. Okay. I know most educators survive on coffee and fumes. You need to drink water. Your brain is going to function better. Your body is going to function better when you're drinking water. So work on increasing your water intake, and then create some financial buffer for yourself, some financial margin. Your first step there is creating a budget. If you don't know where your dollars are going, you can't control them. So create a budget, use the snowball principle to get out of debt, look at needs versus wants. What do we need versus what is just a want on our budget? When you look at those needs versus wants, you then have the ability to start decreasing your spending. Maybe you do a no spend month. Now, I know your family might not be happy about this, but what if you took it as a challenge as a family to have a no spend November, December, whatever it is when you're listening to this? And all that you do in that month is purchase the necessities. And even with groceries, you cut back and you shop your pantry, because most of us have quite a bit of food in our pantry. You shop your freezer and you use those things up, and you only buy what you need. You might be surprised at how much money you're able to save that month and put into your savings. And then that gives you a good idea of areas that maybe we don't need to spend that money in that area. And the final one, which it's at the bottom because it's the hardest one to do, especially when you're already working in an overloaded job, is to increase your income. But each of these, I actually offer a 4-workshop set that looks at these and goes through some practical steps on this. And then I also address these in one-on-one coaching. We look at where you really need to work on building margin. And we start to work through those areas as you determine, all right, this is the area that I need to focus on, and this is what I really need to work on. And I walk through that with you. So 80%. Knowing that I'm talking to educators mostly, there are probably a lot of high performers and perfectionists in this group. So when you're a perfectionist, you set these high expectations on yourself that nobody else has set. Nobody expects you to achieve what you expect yourself to achieve. And that creates a lot of stress. It also consumes a lot of time. So if you are a perfectionist, a high performer, I give you permission to stop at 80%. Now, this can be hard to do, to let go of and to stop there because you want to keep going. But as perfectionists, we keep going, and it hinders us from moving forward. And I say this because I fall into this category and I'm working on the 80%. And so rather than going to perfection, if something is at 80%, it is good enough and I can move forward. Now, your 80% when you're a perfectionist is generally higher than most people's 100%. So give yourself permission to stop at 80% and give your perfectionists on your staff permission to stop at 80%. This also works for delegation. If there is someone who can do a task that you are doing at 80% of the level that you can do it at, you can delegate it to them because they can grow into that last 20%. And it's a growth opportunity. And as a leader, it's not about what we achieve on our own and who's following us, but about who we're training up as leaders and helping to become leaders. So one, stop at 80%, give your staff permission to stop at 80%, and consider delegating at 80%. Now, this activity you can do for any area of your life, but I want you to do it for your work, for your job responsibilities. And I want you to list everything that you have to do. Start jotting down on a piece of paper, in the notes on your phone, somewhere. Start listing every job, duty, responsibility, to do project that you have at work. And I want you to pause this for a moment to do it. Okay, so you have made your whole list. Now, next to your list, I want you to look at each activity and I want you to put a plus sign next to the activities on there that are life-giving. You love doing them. You don't want to hand them off to anybody. I want you to put a minus sign next to the ones that are just life-sucking. You hate doing them. They drain you. If you never had to do them a day in your life, you would be happy. And then the neutral ones get a 0. Now, for those of you who are more visual, put a smiley face next to the life-giving, a frowny face next to the life-sucking, and a straight face next to the neutral. So pause again and put the plus minus 0 next to each activity. Okay, so you now have a list of all of your responsibilities and you have marked them plus, minus, and 0. Now I want you to look at the life-sucking activities. First thing you're going to do is go through and delete any that don't actually have to be done. They're not important, they're not urgent, and you can just delete them from your list. So your first step is to go through and delete. Then you're going to look through the rest and see which ones you can delegate, which ones need to be done. They're important, they might be urgent, but they don't have to be done by you. Which ones can you delegate? When you're doing this for family and home responsibilities, think about things like house cleaning. Do you actually have to be the one to clean your house? Could your children get involved? Could you hire a maid, a house cleaner? There is absolutely nothing wrong with hiring someone to come in once a month to deep clean your house, once a week to do weekly cleaning. There's no judgment here. It is not a responsibility that has to be done by you. What about mowing your lawn? Do you have to do it? Now, for some of you, mowing your lawn is not a life-sucking activity. It's a life-giving one, and it's a couple of hours where you're away from everything, you're free from noise, free from input. It's an activity where you can just kind of let your mind rest. But for some of you, you hate handling the landscaping and lawn mowing. Could you hire someone to do it? Could you hire a neighborhood kid that needs a few bucks? Okay, so think about what you can delegate. And then finally, what you're left with is the things you have to deal with. Things that you have to do. You don't like them, but they have to be done by you, and you can't get rid of them. So how do you deal with them? Part of it is mindset. One of the things you can work on is mindset. And I love this saying. I think I got it from Deidre Stafford in a keynote that she did at a conference I went to, where she said, what the mouth says, the mind hears, and the body feels. So when we're spewing negativity, our body is feeling that and it's dragging us down. And so can you change the conversation? Can you change the way you talk about it? There was a study from, I think it's the University of Ohio, where they found that if you took your negative thoughts, you wrote them down, crumpled them up, and threw them away, kind of capture and release, that you were able to move on in a more positive fashion. I've done quite a bit of work for myself on negativity and capturing those thoughts of, all right, that's a negative thought. We are stopping right here, and I am turning that around and rephrasing it in a positive manner. An example of this would be when you're making a list of, I want to get out of debt, that's stated in a negative manner. Even though it's a good thing, it's still stated in a negative manner. What if you turned it around to, I want to pursue wealth? I want to pursue financial freedom. There's a different tone to that, and there's a different feel. So work on reducing negativity, and that's one of the things I focus on is reducing the negativity around you and reducing the negativity that's right here. So that's one step that you can take in dealing with these activities that you just really don't enjoy, and you'll be amazed what happens. So I had the past couple of Monday mornings, I have gone on my social media for my business and just said, hey, let's have a fantastic Monday. Remember that what our mouth says, our mind hears, and our body feels. So let's speak positivity into a Monday morning. We don't have to have a bad case on the Mondays. We can have a fabulous and fantastic Monday. And then the next step you can take, I do offer some workshops. I work with districts and organizations to provide workshops. I have a 4-workshop series that really looks at the 4 areas of margin, and I provide that for your staff. I also provide one-on-one coaching where I work with educators and professionals to look at what are your main stress and burnout pain points, and let's identify what you can work on to reduce those and start to heal those. And you also can put together a customized program with me for your district or organization. We can look at the workshop series, we can create a workshop to address the specific needs of your organization or district, and we can include some one-on-one coaching in there. So I have a district that is going to use the 4-workshop series. They're going to do some focus groups. I'm going to work with their staff after the workshops to see what can the district do to help support the staff in these areas that I've just addressed. And then I'm also going to do a day of one-on-one coaching where I'm available to their staff for them to come in and meet with me and look at what steps they can take personally, what step that staff member can take to start to move forward, to reduce stress, to reduce burnout, and to move forward in a healthier way. So these are all steps that you can take with your staff. So I just want to thank you for joining me. And if you have any questions, if you'd like me to work with you, please reach out. There's my email, and I would love to work with you and help support you and your staff in reducing burnout, in reducing stress, and finding a healthier way to deal with the overload and stress that is in our lives.